Recently in South Australia, a mum crossed lines by going into a classroom and screaming, threatening, swearing at a Year 8 student because her daughter was being bullied by that student, allegedly, and it made national news headlines. Today, we talk about that incident, but more, what do we do when our children are being bullied? Is it ever okay to confront the person that we think is doing the wrong stuff? Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson. Hunt, we've considered carefully whether we do or do not wade into these waters, and we've decided with some new information that it's worth stepping in.
It never ceases to amaze me how the media skews stories for the benefit of some clickbait.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I think that it has been entirely misrepresented.
Recently on the Kyle and Jackie O radio show, they got hold of the Adelaide mum who was at the centre of the furore. They had a chat with her. We're going to play a couple of pieces of audio from their interview with the mum, starting with what actually happened in the classroom. This is audio from one of the kids' phones.
You want to go, bitch! You want to go! You want to go to my door again! I'm going to my toilet, bitch! I'm your wife! Yeah! You want to my...
Whoa.
That's intense.
So you can see why this made national headlines. What's astonishing is when you hear this mum talking to Kyle and Jack.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Oh,
Good.
you sound so sweet.
Yeah.
What?
Look, every mum is sweet until Mama Bear gets poked. And now, look, listen, I mean, we're not going to identify you. I know because, you know, the media spotlight's all over you and you did what you did. But you know what? A lot of mums and a lot of dads, they say, you know what, sick of going through the proper channels and nothing happening. They can understand why you did this.
Kylie, this is one of those situations where you hear the explosion, then you hear the mum and you think, how can that even be the same person?
Yeah.
Social media has been polarised. Some people are saying absolutely not okay. Because when you hear it, you can see why. So a parent getting in the face of a Year 8 child like that is stunning. But social media also saying we need more of this. And Kyle, the voice of the people, saying, yeah, this is I'm on your side here. I want to support you. I want to suggest that two things can be true at once. Both can be right.
The idea that you would confront a student in that situation and in that way is just, it's wrong on every level. We have crossed every conceivable line when we think that behaviour is okay. And
yet it's appropriate to stand in solidarity with a parent who is saying, I've just gone beyond my tipping point because of the fear that I have for my child's life.
What's really fascinating to me is what happens next in the interview.
Can I ask, Mum, first of all, what was the bullying that was taking place? How bad was it? What was happening to your daughter?
There's actually a group of them. So it first started off with a comment made to her to state, hey, have you had plastic surgery, doll? Because it looks like it hasn't worked and you're an ugly so-and-so.
Yeah.
Now, what happened is it planted a little bit of a seed in her brain, and she stopped eating. I would find mouldy sandwiches in her bag, and she stopped eating for a long period of time. And I would see my 13-year-old be destroyed, and she would go from a beautiful 13-year-old girl to nothing. It's like she was empty and she had nothing left.
More context helps us to realise the nature of the challenge that this young girl was experiencing and the deep concern that her mum had for not only her well-being but her safety.
Once you start to get context, again, it's not okay to go into a classroom and behave the way that she behaved, but all of a sudden you can sort of see where this turns to desperation. This turns to utter fear for your child's well-being.
If it wasn't for this interview, I was left grappling with how it was even conceivable that she got into a classroom.
Well, let's have a listen to what she says to Kyle and Jack next to explain that.
How often do you read in the newspaper another young girl took a life because of bullying and nothing happened?
So you were invited into the classroom and then
Yes, I was.
to talk to the bullies?
So So what actually happened is they didn't know. They must have thought I would have been a parent or something. They obviously knew that I was a parent. I actually went into the classroom and stated, "Is this girl here?" And they said, "Yeah, she's right over there. No problem." So I turned to the girl and I said, and I was calm. Yeah. I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Look, did you say that to my daughter?" Well, she actually got quite uppity and said, "And who the earth do you think you are?" to me. 13-year-old.
Sorry.
13-year-old.
I'm enraged right now.
Jackie.
Honestly, I
So
really am.
they didn't show that part, which is frustrating. And then she turned around to me and said, "Do you know who my dad is?" And I said, "No, I don't, but I hope he realises how much of a bully you are."
Okay, so we're going to stop the interview there. We can't replay all of Kyle and Jack's interview and their entire radio show. But all of a sudden, you see the complexity, the challenge, the difficulty, and the huge, huge emotion that's conveyed in this situation. And our conversation now that there is a little bit more context is, what are you supposed to do? When you're the parent, is it ever okay to go to the classroom and have a chat with the child? What's supposed to happen with the school? How do we do this? It sounds like, Kylie, and again, we still don't have the full story, but it sounds like it's just a gigantic mess and it's been managed quite poorly at a number of levels from a number of different angles.
So if we were to make this conversation productive
Yep.
for parents who are dealing with this kind of thing, so we don't end up with more of these kinds of news stories across our feeds, how can we help parents move forward in positive ways to ensure the safety psychologically, physically, mentally for our children?
There were too many stories last year where this ended in tragedy. We can't have it happen anymore. After the break, we're going to share with you a handful of things that you can do as a parent to avoid anything resembling this. Okay, Kylie, too many schools are failing when it comes to dealing with bullying. There are some schools that do it exceptionally well. They're really, really on the ball, but too many are failing. One of the main reasons for that is because too many schools are trying to implement something that's known as restorative practice. Restorative practice is the big buzz. A few years ago, it was growth mindset. Everyone was talking about, hey, you've got to have a growth mindset. Now, it's all about this idea of restorative practice, helping people to take some perspective and understand the impact that their behaviour is having on the victim. And too many teenagers
don't care. They
know exactly how to manipulate it. We also know, evidence shows pretty clearly, especially for boys, interestingly, that empathy declines as testosterone goes up. And so, obviously, this is a girl-to-girl situation. Nevertheless, restorative practice as a general rule is not nearly as effective as the promise that is out there. It's kind of like mindfulness. Everyone's like, oh, mindfulness, this and that. The evidence doesn't support it nearly as well as the hype around it. Let's talk about what you're supposed to do as a parent. Okay, we're not going to start giving schools directions here. That's not our job, but we can help parents to deal with it.
I think the first thing to acknowledge when we're in this situation, Kyle talked about the triggering of the mama bear. And it's real. There's a deep sense and need to protect our children. And we feel that they're under attack. Just as we've heard in this thing, there's this beautiful, sweet mum who
but on a hair trigger.
Literally was enraged by the experience that she had in the classroom. And so remembering that when there are high emotions, low intelligence, we aren't able to access the part of our brain that helps us think rationally, clearly, and can deal with things in a calm manner.
So we don't have the audio from the video, but if the mum is right and she's been provoked like that, this is a terrible situation to be in because she's already hugely sensitive. You can't think straight in a high emotion state. Kaboom! It's explosives, it's incendiary, it's fireworks, it's dynamite, it turns into what this has turned into. So high emotions, low intelligence. You need to have somebody else either acting as your spokesperson or at least protecting everyone in the room in case things blow up. Second thing to highlight, you do have to work with the school. You have to work with the system. It's a simple reality. You talk to the teacher, you talk to the head of wellbeing, you talk to the head of year, you talk to the head of house, you talk to the assistant principal, you talk to the principal, you get the message across. And the best way to do it is with evidence. If you don't have the evidence, one of the challenges that you face is the more people you talk to, the more they start to, in some cases, not all, but in some cases, they start to see you and your family as the problem rather than the kid who's doing the bullying.
Yeah.
So get the evidence and make sure you're really clear in working with the system. Don't go around the system. It will only backfire. It can't possibly work for you when you go around the system in the majority of cases.
And in this case, she's obviously acknowledged that she's tried to work with the school.
It sounds like it.
But again, keep a diary, keep a journal of all of those interactions.
Spoke to this person at this time, we discussed these things. Absolutely, because the more you've got that, the more, if you need to escalate it, which is the next thing I'm going to suggest, the more you can say, here's what I've done.
Yeah.
I'm not being a whinging whiner. We have got evidence, and here are the conversations. And
spoke to this teacher this day.
These are the
had 3
outcomes.
more messages from girls this night.
Correct.
Like, just keep a running dialogue of what's going on.
You got to tell your kids not to delete the stuff that's on their phone too, just for that. So the next thing is, if you've got to escalate it, go as high as you can to get the outcomes you need. So if we're dealing with a private school, you go to the principal or you go to the board. If you're dealing with a public school, you go to the Department of Education. You've also got access to 2 other government authorities. You've got the police. And if you've got good evidence, the police are empowered to act. Furthermore, you can go online to the eSafety website, esafety.gov.au. Julie Inman-Grant, the eSafety Commissioner, cannot get the word out enough that this website exists to help. We don't know if this mum in this case has done it, and we're not really talking about that anymore. Rather, here are the steps to take. Kylie, we've been through this with a couple of our kids, but quite seriously in the last few years with one of them. Our decision was that we didn't bother escalating it. We worked with the school till we saw it wasn't working, and then
I guess the most important thing to understand here is that we did work with the school and they were extremely supportive.
They actually were.
Of our child.
Yeah.
The challenge is you can't change other people. And so while they were working with the other girl and they were working with our daughter, we were not reaping the benefits of that conversation.
And so we decided.
And the most important thing for us was our child needed to feel safe.
Right.
And she did not feel safe.
At
So
all.
taking her out of that environment was literally the only option. We needed to remove her from that so that she felt like she had psychological and physical safety. That needs to be a consideration, even when you don't know what other options are out there.
Yeah, fundamentally, our job is to keep our kids safe. And that's why this mum has lost it. She wants to keep her daughter safe.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was the most productive way that she could have done it.
Well,
but
ultimately, the acknowledgement that we all have to understand is that we cannot control anyone else's behaviour. And if that's the case, our kids are being hurt by other people, then if the only option available to us is to remove them, that is the option.
the last thing that we need to touch on is the importance of building a community around your kids. We have discussed this a number of times in our own home. I can't remember if we've talked about it on the pod or not, but I'm increasingly of the opinion that having children hanging out with a whole lot of other kids their age is not in their best interests. Historically, culturally, anthropologically, across time, clans, tribes, whatever, children did not associate with all of the other kids their age. They would have played with other kids, but they spent most of their time in the company of adults being mentored and shown the way to live their lives. And there's wisdom in that. I would much rather our children sit at the dining table with our adult friends and learn from them than hang out with a bunch of other kids their age and talk about, I don't know, like Taylor Swift. Like, come on, let's get on with our lives and focus on stuff that matters and be seen as unconditionally in the most positive light possible, which mature adults are more likely to do.
A few weeks ago, one of our family friends recognised that one of our daughters was having a hard time. And she came to me and she said, "Hey, I was wondering if you'd mind if I spent some time with your daughter. She's been on my mind and I thought it would be nice to spend some time with her."
How awesome is that?
She took her home to her place and they cooked some cookies and just spent some time, chatting. That night when our daughter came home, she said, "Mum," she said, "it was so nice to have someone other than you check in and see how I was doing." Recognising and knowing that she felt seen and heard and valued, that she felt...
And there's no competition, right? Like all the other kids their age, they're all competing with each other for attention and for, look at me, I've got status. But when it's a kid with an adult, there's no status competition. They've just got that unconditional love.
And uninterrupted. Like there is, like you said, no competition.
Yeah.
They've just got their undivided attention. And it just was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful to my friend for recognising it.
All right, we need to wrap it up. Our time is well spent. Really hope that this conversation has, number one, given you more context on how this situation got so bad. But number two, given you some suggestions on how you can help your child if they are in a situation where they're being bullied. lots of food for thought, lots to consider, lots to talk about. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. If you'd like more information and more resources to make your family happier, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.